Welcome back everyone to Formula 1 2020 and to the second of 10 end of season reviews. Today we're talking about Scuderia Alpha Tauri. And just in case you missed yesterday's episode, I hope you didn't, but if you did, what we're going to be doing in this series is going through each team, having a little bit of an analysis of the team's 2020 season, take a look at each of their drivers, in today's case, Pierre Gasly and Kvyat, and at the end of each episode, whacking it all together in one juicy tier list. It's a lot of fun, so if you want to join me over this winter period, feel free to subscribe. I hope you enjoy, as always. However, let's crack on with today's episode. Alpha Tauri then, a team rebranded for the 2020 season, no longer Toro Rosso, a brand new lick of paint to go with it, and can I just say, what a lovely livery Alpha Tauri put on show for us this season. A bit of white, that matte navy blue, working wonders in my opinion. Sticking with the driver lineup they had in the second half of the 2019 season, Pierre Gasly, Red Bull reject, how could he bounce back in 2020? And Kvyat continuing his own redemption after rejoining Formula 1 in 2019. And overall this year, it's been a mega success for a team that for so many years was struggling at the lower end of the field, really trying to fight hard for points but very rarely succeeding, never really attempting to get into Q3 unless there was some kind of miracle. So I think it's fair to say 2020 has been a special year for the team, the first time in the team's history scoring over 100 points, 7th in the constructors' standings, still nearer the lower end of the table. However, for the second time in the team's history, victory in Monza. Pierre Gasly scoring his first in Formula 1. A legendary weekend, and one the team will never forget in Monza. But throughout the season, the team have consistently been fighting in that midfield, fighting the likes of McLaren, Racing Point, Renault, and their closest rival throughout the year, Ferrari. That on its own, a mega statement from the team, even if that's more down to Ferrari's failings rather than Alpha Tauri's brilliance. That being said, Alpha Tauri have made a huge step forward over the course of this year, starting off struggling to fight out of Q1 in the early stages of the season, Austria in particular, with both cars really struggling in qualifying and the race. However, fast forward just 16 races to the end of the season, they're no longer fighting Haas, no longer fighting Williams, Alfa Romeo, they're fighting the big boys, not quite Mercedes and Red Bull just yet, but in the mix with McLaren, with Renault, with Racing Point, and for me, Alpha Tauri are the clear standout favourites to be the most developed car, the most upgraded car, if you compare its final version to its one that we saw in the first race in Austria. Brilliant from the engineers back in Italy. So then, as we head over to our first tier list of the day, of course we'll do the drivers at the end of the video, but the team. Yesterday, I put McLaren in great. And actually, I'm going to put Alpha Tauri right next to them. Yes, 7th in the constructors isn't their best ever. However, the first time scoring over 100 points, victory that by itself should probably be put in the legendary status. However, the team's incredible development over the course in this year, for me, puts them ahead of some of those other midfield teams, despite not being consistently in front of them. By the time we got to Abu Dhabi, certainly Alpha Tauri were in the mix, so it's a bit of a rogue one, but I'm putting them in the great category. Our driver head-to-head is not as close as we saw yesterday in the McLaren head-to-head. Pierre Gasly really showing that domination, especially on a Saturday, but also when it came to the driver's standings. 13-4 in the qualifying battle, Gasly having an average finishing position of 10.1 on a Saturday, with Kvyat just a little bit behind on 12.1, so only a gap of 2. McLaren though, just that little bit closer. In the races, 9-8, very, very close between the pair of them. However, when Gasly was able to beat Kvyat, it was in those races he scored big. 75 points for the Frenchman compared to 32 to the Russian. A best qualifying of 6th for Danny Kvyat was beat by Gasly's P4 in Imola. An incredible weekend all round for the team, but the best race finish of 4th again in Imola for Danny Kvyat was also beaten by Pierre Gasly's race win at Monza. And whilst we're on the subject of Pierre Gasly, let's talk about his season, because though that race in Italy was incredible, one of the best moments of the season, 100%, even if you take away that result, this year has still been fantastic for Pierre Gasly, a driver that very easily could have really fallen under the pressure of moving back to Toro Rosso this season with Alpha Tauri. It could have gone so wrong. However, Pierre has been able to harvest all that disappointment, all of that frustration about leaving Red Bull, putting it all back into his performances this year, driving with just that little bit more finesse, which we didn't really see in the early stages of 2019, really proving he deserves not only a space on the Formula 1 grid, but a space at a top team. And I would be very surprised if in 12 months' time, he is still planning on being at Alpha Tauri for 2022. Anyway, back to this season. His drives across the board. Whether his car was one of the quickest in the midfield, Imola qualified 4th, but then in the race managed to sprint ahead of that midfield and was more in a battle with Verstappen for 3rd than he was in a fight for 4th with the likes of Daniel Ricciardo and Carlos Sainz. Of course, did fail to finish that race thanks to an engine issue, but that really proved that when he's got a car underneath him that he enjoys, that really manages and suits his driving style, he can do the business. On weekends where the car isn't so good, Portimao, Danny Kvyat struggled to get anywhere near Pierre Gasly. Gasly, in the race, managed to pull off an awesome strategy, an audacious strategy really, going really long into the race, fending off Esteban Ocon. And what about that overtake at Spa? Past Sergio Perez, up Eau Rouge of all places, one of the overtakes of the season. I really cannot praise this man enough for his mega performances in 2020. On the other side of the garage, Danny Kvyat. A very difficult season, a very different story, because I don't think Danny has been terrible this year. I wouldn't even go as far as to saying he's had a bad season. I just think the biggest failing for Danny Kvyat, first of all, is reliability. He really did seem to have the butt end of that at Alpha Tauri this year. But also, the fact that Pierre Gasly was having such an incredible season, I think really undermines the work Danny Kvyat was able to do over the course of this year. And I think races such as Imola, where he was able to fight back in those closing stages, some of the best overtaking manoeuvres of the season, but we just didn't quite see that often enough. He had a great little ding-dong with Alex Albon in Germany before the two made contact, Albon squeezing him off the road into the final corner. Kvyat, so unlucky to lose his front wing. Albon saying that the Alpha Tauris were fighting him just a little bit too hard. But Danny Kvyat wasn't able to do that enough this year. And that's what frustrates me so much. Because when he's on it, he is very much on it. However, when we go to circuits, when there's weekends where it's not quite all lining up for him, it's not quite as rosy. And I think Portimao was a perfect example of that. Wasn't able to find the time during the week to jump on the simulator. That's a little bit unfair to blame that on Danny, considering the bizarre year we've had in 2020. However, he really struggled to adapt to that circuit. Out in Q1, one of the slowest drivers in the race. And of course now, at the end of the season, the team have decided enough is enough. Danny Kvyat's time with Alpha Tauri is over, and Yuki Tsunoda will be replacing him for next year. And in full transparency, in all fairness to Danny Kvyat, I don't think that's a reflection of his performances, rather the performances of Tsunoda in Formula 2 this year, who's been brilliant. However, for Danny Kvyat, who's had an average year, unfortunately, he's the one on the chopping block. So, before we go then, let's jump over to our tier list for our drivers in the 2020 season. Yesterday, I put both McLaren drivers in the good section. If you missed yesterday's episode, I did a full rationale. I know it's a little bit out there, but don't worry, bear with me over the course of these episodes. Today, Gasly and Kvyat, I'm going to put here. Gasly, our first driver to enter the great stage, pushing legendary with that race victory in Monza. However, I am saving that for those very, very special drivers over the course of this year. Don't worry, Pierre, I'm sure you'll make it one day. So great, still a brilliant category to be in, and definitely an awesome year for the Frenchman. Danny Kvyat, he's our first driver in the average category. Again, I said it earlier, so unlucky with reliability this year, and so unlucky to have Pierre Gasly having a mega season alongside him. It didn't quite work out. Will this be the final year we see him in Formula 1? We're going to have to wait and see. But that has been your race review, your season review for Alpha Tauri Formula 1 team. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section down below. Where would you put the team? Where would you put the drivers in the tier list for this season? Let me know down below. Thank you all very much for watching. Subscribe if you're new. I hope you enjoyed, and I hope to see you all in the next one.